Today, we're going over a few tips and tricks on the Serbo GX here. And I've also got some news to share about the business in general. As some of you know, we've been going through some changes recently, so you'll definitely want to stick around for the end of the video. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But let's get into some interesting things you can do with the Serbo GX here. Almost forgot here. If you have any ideas or things that you do with your Serbo GX that I did not talk about, please share those below. I'd love to know, and I'm sure other viewers would like to know as well. All right, let's get into it here. First tip and trick for your Serbo GX is something I already have done, and maybe some of you are already seeing it. And in a lot of our videos, we've talked about it, and that is GUI mods. For those of you that don't know, it's a modification for the Venus OS. That's what this is here. It's like the operating system for the Victron monitoring system. And it's a modification that gives some really great features, like you can quickly adjust your input currents. We'll be talking about that later. You can change your what your inverter's doing, all kinds of stuff just really quickly. It's way quicker than doing it normally. And it's really simple to install. Just Google Victron GUI mods and you'll find the package for it. I know some of you have asked for a video on this, and I'm sure I'll get to it, just haven't gotten to it quite yet. And anyway, this is a real time saver, and I feel like it improves the experience overall. So that's our first tip. Get GUI mods on your Venus system for sure. So the next tip is adjusting your AC input current limit a little bit lower, about 5% below the limit of your input source. Now I'll show you my different input current limits here using GUI mods. And it's important to understand that when you set the current limit, the MultiPlus will many times pull exactly that much current. A typical scenario might be you just get to a 30 amp campsite, so you set your input current limit to 30 amps. Now you've been off grid for a while and the batteries could use a charge, and the luxury of unlimited shore power sounds great. So you have the air conditioner running and that'll pull 15 to 20 amps. Then the MultiPlus uses the leftover amps in your 30 amp configuration to charge the batteries and run anything else in the RV. Now with it using exactly 30 amps, it very well could pop the breaker over time. Now to get around this, what we recommend you do is you adjust your input current limits just a little bit down. So you can see I have a couple of presets here, 14, 18, 28, 45. And you can see those are all just a little bit lower than what I might typically connect to. My 14 amp is for the smallest 15 amp shore power cord that I may ever connect to. The 18 is for really small generators or a 20 amp. The 28 is for when I'm connected to a 30 amp connection. And then the 45 is when I'm running off my generator. Because ours, technically, this is an RV and we are set up as a single phase 30 amp coach, although we have two inverters. It's complicated. Now, if you don't have GUI mods installed, what you're gonna wanna do is tap on the screen, go to Menu, MultiPlus, and then your input current limit. You're gonna have to adjust that a little bit at a time for each individual input current source, and just make sure to knock it just a couple of volts down, or a couple of amps down rather than what you whatever the source actually is. The next tip I want to share is DVCC charge current limiting for your lithium battery balancing. When your lithium batteries have not been fully charged in a while due to extended boondocking or long periods of storage, the battery cells will come out of balance. We typically see this near the top of charge, which, as you can see, we're not anywhere near right now. The classic symptom is the voltage slowly climbing near 14 volts. I've seen this as early as 13.8 on a 12 volt system, and then it will instantly go to the absorption voltage, which is typically about 14.6. And if you're looking on here, this is a 24 volt system, so we're at 26 volts right now. When you see that voltage go to 14.6, that means there's no more charge going into the batteries because the BMS has cut off charging. And in a minute or two, you'll see it flip back and start accepting charge again, and the voltage will drop again. and it'll keep bouncing back and forth, back and forth. And here, I'll show you from some data logs on our system exactly what's going on. So this is a clear example of where we really like using the VRM. And these are data logs from, looks like December 6th, where I charged the battery all the way up, and it hadn't been charged all the way up in a good month or so. Don't worry about that error that just popped up. It's something I got to reset. I don't know exactly why that popped out, but let's not focus on that. What I want to focus on is this part of the charging process here. You can see where as it was charging up, at some point it started hitting high voltage cutoff, and that's actually why this alarm showed up, is because the voltage spiked way up here. You can see that while it was charging at a ton of amps, and the voltage spiked way up there. Looks like, well, let's add that together. That's 14.19 and 16.44. That was 31 volts or so. So it actually freaked out my solar charger. That current has to go somewhere when the BMS shuts off charging, and that current ends up going into a voltage spike is what it ends up looking like. And so that's why it's important to charge up slowly when we're getting near top of charge. And then as the day went on, you can see it kept turning on and off, on and off, on and off, because the BMS slowly was balancing it, and I didn't manage it probably the way I should have. Now eventually, as you can see here, if we keep scrolling, I'm just pinching to zoom here a little bit, you can see this kind of sawtooth pattern eventually levels out, and after a while, after a good long while, there we go, the battery got more in balance. And it's pretty darn close to being in balance now. There's always some. But anyway, this is really the pattern that we're trying to avoid. Or if I would have set my input current limit to 5 or 10 amps, it wouldn't have been like this, and my balancer could have done its job and balanced the battery pack out. But this white line here is the deviation, so you can see it continually got better. It started as bad as 3.9%, and it kept getting better and better and better, and now it's hanging around somewhere around 1%. And that could be, remember, I built my own battery, so I could have a loose connection somewhere that could be causing a little bit of that. I want to stress that the poor connection would be a cell voltage sense connection, not an actual battery current connection on the data readings. But anyway, and now during normal usage, we're pretty much perfectly in balance, which is what we want to see. Those are some of my tips and tricks that I use all the time when I'm setting up systems, or like I said, these are things I use in my own system quite a bit. So add whatever you may have down below. I'd love to hear different ways you use this system. And then lastly, I also want to mention we got some pretty big news. The bigger news is going to be next week, but we are closing on a property this next week that is going to be the future of our family and this business. So I have to thank each and every one of you who has bought something from us, allowed us to install a system on your RV. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're heading into a new chapter, and it's kind of scary, but also really, really exciting. And I'm glad you're here for it. And so I just want to share that with you. So if you've made it this far, come on, you got to subscribe now. If you haven't subscribed yet, you've got to subscribe now. I've been looking at the numbers. We're getting really close to 2,000 subs, which who knows, in a couple of years, maybe that'll be nothing. But right now, that seems pretty cool to me that there are 2,000 of you that find what we do interesting. So thank you. This is the best community. You guys are great in the comments, all that. And wish you happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Enjoy this season. And I think, you know what? I think I hear Santa coming. You know what? Make sure you're on your best behavior, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Yeah?
Where's Biscuit? They took off his
Oh, hello, Mr. Burke.
He's